but it's a fact. The bigger the effort you put into something, the greater the reward. And if you really are dead set and determined to do something, then just go ahead and do it.
Welcome to Clicks and Bricks Podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset.
If you get one shot at this, what kind of shot are you going to take?
If we forget who we are, they're going to forget who you are.
You've got an adversity story that's out of this world.
Everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer.
Today we have Steve. We're going to talk about his story about how he was in recruitment years and years ago. Him and his wife decided to travel the world, become English teachers for a long time. And when they got done with that journey, they decided to start their own recruitment company. How are you doing today, Steve?
Hi, how are you doing, Ken? Great to see you.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us. You're coming from Scotland. I know we got a bit of a time difference there.
Yeah. It's the middle of the afternoon here in Bonnie, Scotland. Yeah.
Oh, that's not too bad. It's really early in the morning here in Central America. So fantastic. Can you tell
Just
the
get
audience?
A good coffee.
Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you guys do at McNally Recruitment?
Yeah, okay. So Steve McNally, I was born and bred in Scotland. At the moment, I'm in Dundee, which is on the east coast of Scotland, and it's actually where I was brought up. However, when I first got into recruitment, which was IT recruitment, I moved to Edinburgh, and that's where I learnt my trade. When I was in Edinburgh with a small sort of family-run business. Well, they weren't that small. They had about 30-odd consultants. Gave me great training of how you treat customers, how you be in clients and candidates, and it was a good introduction to recruitment. And it turned out it was actually not bad at it at all. I won quite a few awards. I then had some time, about 3 years in Dublin, also doing IT recruitment, and then I kind of took a break a little bit from recruitment, sort of the end of 2002. However, I got sucked back into it again, but this time in architecture, so the design of buildings, which was kind of cool. So you saw lots of amazing portfolios of these architects, which was just incredible. I did that for a few years, 3 years, and then that's when I decided to live the dream with my new wife and travel the world, supposedly for 2 years, but it turned out to be a 12-and-a-half-year journey. When we got back here to Bonnie, Scotland, we had our first born, our wee girl Lily. And it was when we got back, that's where McNally Recruitment was born. What we do is we provide a bespoke service in sourcing professionals within the IT and energy sector, although at the moment we're mainly focused on IT. And we do that really throughout Scotland, the rest of the UK, and we obviously also have an international reach.
Wonderful. So you took what was supposed to be a 2-year break, and I love this story. We talked a little bit about it before we jumped on the show, and you find yourself in South Korea. And
yeah,
were you out of cash at that point, or how did you survive after the wealthy family, credit cards? How did that happen?
I'll have to correct you there by saying a break. It certainly wasn't a break. It was meant to be a 2-year kind of traveling thing, but we traveled through Africa by land, maybe 6 or 7 countries throughout Africa, and we quickly discovered, having just got married, we didn't have that much money. We had some credit cards, and they were very quickly getting maxed, and we decided, okay, we need to get work, but we want to travel. And I had friends who in the past had worked in South Korea as English teachers. We're talking about teaching English as a second language, or TESOL as some people would call it. And that's what we did. The beauty about teaching contracts is they're usually just 1 year. And at the end of the year, you're either extended or you leave. It's entirely up to you. And what was basically happening is we were doing the contract and doing a little bit of traveling. Then we ended up in Australia, got back into recruitment in 2008, but of course the economy crashed, and in 2009 was made redundant, as was pretty much all of the Australia office and half of Australia. So we came back to South Korea to do teaching again. At the end of that trip, we did maybe about 6 months non-stop traveling. And we were probably supposed to come back to Scotland, but we got offered teaching jobs in the Middle East. very, very well paid, challenging, but very well paid. And we ended up being in the Middle East for about just over 7 years. The beauty was during the school holidays, we'd just go away and travel somewhere. So yeah, 2 years turned into 12 and a half years.
Wow. That's an amazing story. So now you can always go back to teaching if you have to, right? Or wanted to at that point.
Don't get me wrong. Yeah, exactly, Ken. I mean, don't get me wrong. It wasn't background. I did a little bit of training in it as part of teaching English as a second language. I did the CELTA certificate, which taught you a lot. But I absolutely loved the job, in all honesty.
Right.
Especially teaching the young people more than anything. These are, teenagers getting ready to think about leaving school and what they want to do next. And giving something to them was brilliant. I really, really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Do you have to know the other languages to teach English as a second language, or do you have to pick up some of it?
Thankfully, you didn't need it. You did communicate in English pretty much all the time, but I did always master being able to ask for a beer in whatever language it was.
That is the priority.
That and please and thank you, hello and how are you? I always knew those ones.
Right.
But no, I didn't need the other languages, but I picked up little bits and pieces from other places.
Right. So then 2019 rolls around, you're starting the family, little one's on its way, you come back to Scotland, starting to settle in, and you're going to go get another recruitment job. How's that feel?
Yeah, I wasn't particularly nervous because I'd had a lot of success in recruitment before. I'd always been promoted, I'd always won awards, etc., etc. So I was confident I would get something else. And in all honesty, I didn't get that many interviews as I expected to get. And we wanted to base ourselves in Dundee. I had a couple of interviews. One interview, they didn't proceed, unfortunately, although I ended up later on sharing an office with them. And the other job I was offered, and they wanted me to set up their IT division from scratch up in Aberdeen, which is about 70 miles north of Dundee. So it would have been a lot of commuting. But, the job's a job. It was decent salary, decent terms. But I just basically literally sat there in the couch or sofa in my house and turned to my wife and said, why am I doing this for somebody else again? And as supportive as she's always been, she said, yeah, exactly, Steve, why are you? Do it yourself. You've always said you wanted to. And that was that.
All right, so a little bit of encouragement for the wife, and you're off to the races. Now, I know that you've been successful as a recruiter working for somebody else, and that's the one job, right? Actually, it's like 2 jobs, I think, in recruitment, right? Find new candidates and vet them, and then find new potential businesses that you're going to place people at,
exactly.
Right? There's both sides of that hub.
Absolutely.
And if that was the only thing that business encompassed, it would be, pretty easy. But now there's all these new things. Were you nervous how did you overcome the thought process behind, I'm going to have accounting and human resource issues and finance stuff that I'm going to have to deal with as well, right? You're taking on, several new hats whenever you're going to say, hey, I was successful at recruiting. How did you have the confidence that you'd be successful at recruiting and running the business?
In all honesty, I didn't even think about it. I'm finding it hard. I'm finding it now. It's not easy, but it's extremely rewarding. So I didn't really put that much thought into all the different jobs that I would have to do. But, unless you've got a lot of money, we had a bit of savings from working in the Middle East, not thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds. So you have to do things as best as you can. I think, as I said to you earlier, having just decided on the couch what I was going to do, the symbol, our slogan, people fit for your business, the name, the color scheme, that was all created within an hour of the decision of let's establish McNally Recruitment. That first recruitment company I worked for, that was a man, a wife, and his brother, the Kingsford Smith Partnership, they were called. And they always said to me, if you're ever going to start on your own, keep your name. In some senses, I think that's a great idea because people buy people. That's the bottom line. And in business, if you're successful, it's as much they're buying into you as to what you're providing. I mean, in hindsight, if you've got a large client base or a large network, and everybody knows you, then fine, that kind of makes sense. But yeah, maybe I could have had a different name because I didn't have that network. I'd been out of the country for 12 and a half years.
Right.
So my network was gone. 12 and a half years ago, there was no LinkedIn. So everything was done by your own database and your own contacts
Right.
and little black books. There was no LinkedIn in those days. So yeah, it was certainly very different. And it is tough. I'll be honest with you. Some days it's really, really hard. If we could only have 48 hours in the day, it would be okay. But unfortunately, we don't have 48 hours
Right.
in the day. But the thing is, when you invest your own money and your time into your business, it's very difficult to give up. And there's no secret that this last year and a bit, 2 years with the pandemic, has been extremely challenging, probably the most challenging any business could possibly have. Never mind it being a recruitment business where everybody's been made redundant and furloughed. So but when it's your own baby, when it's your business, you just keep pushing and pushing until you make a success of it. And we had other issues as well, but yeah, last year I started making placements, and it's been happening every single month. And I'm pleased to say that 2 days ago I employed a young person to kind of give them a start in life and hopefully train them up how to do the job.
That's wonderful. And on the color scheme, I think you nailed it. I love that color scheme, that orange. And is that navy blue or is it black? I'm having a hard time seeing it through the screen.
That's okay. No, it's okay. A little bit of confession here. It's tangerine black and white. Now,
okay.
My wife absolutely hates football, or soccer, as you call it in America.
Okay.
I have been a Dundee United fan from the age of 4. I'm now almost 53, and I've been going to their games for almost 50 years. In fact, our owner of the club is actually American. And the American football team plays in tangerine black and white. And it was my wife's idea. She says, you know what? I think that would work because I haven't seen anything else like it.
Right.
I'm like, that's an interesting point. And I actually did a bit of research, and yeah, I never found a single company in the recruitment industry that had this color scheme. And yeah, I think the contrast works. I think it's bright, it's different, and yeah, it was my wife's idea, but it's my football team's football colors.
Wonderful. So I think it's really important to step back and let the audience realize something, that you did not necessarily even think about these other hats: human resources, accounts receivable, accounts payable, all those things. What you knew going in is that you could do the 2 core fundamentals of the business, and that would be get businesses that I can place people in and find people that need to be placed and vet them properly for that business. So you knew your revenue stream immediately, and all of those other things can be figured out, right? I had one of my mentors at some point tell me, don't not do a job because the accounting's hard. You can hire accountants, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
You can hire all those people to do those other things. If you know how to turn over that core piece of business and facilitate it, that's all you really need to run. That's the business. Everything else is paperwork and pushing stuff around. Obviously, the better you are at the first piece, the more people you can hire to help you do those other pieces. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Although, albeit that does take time, but we're getting there.
Absolutely. Hiring people today, I'm assuming it's the same across the country. Finding quality candidates today is really, really challenging.
It's actually one of the biggest challenges, I think, for any business. If you look at our logo, it's funny because my business model has changed completely from the beginning. I had the very, very silly and naive idea that, well, wait a minute, I've worked in IT recruitment and been successful. I've worked in architecture recruitment, been successful. And I had a very short time in oil and gas recruitment, and even in that short time was successful. I'll just do them all. You can't do that. You just cannot do that. So I kind of ditched the construction or architecture side, and I did actually open up an office in Aberdeen, a second office, and employed somebody somebody up there to do energy. But yeah, they just didn't do the work. And unfortunately, he had to leave, and I shut down the office, and I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to focus 100% of my time on IT. And then they had this government scheme here in Scotland where the government would help to pay for a young person's salary. And you take them on for 6 months, and you don't have to keep them at the end, but they'll pay their wages, or most of their wages, for 6 months. And I thought, you know what, if there's one thing you can do as you get older, it's give a little back, and that's what I decided to do. So the girl started a couple of days ago. She's only 22, never worked in this industry before, but when I interviewed her, I just got this gut feeling that I think this girl could do something. But some of the other candidates were absolutely awful. But
yeah.
It's
we
tough
hire
finding the right people.
nonstop, right? We've always got resume or job postings out for all of my businesses, nonstop hiring.
Yeah.
Now, the talent pool is smaller today than it was 3 years ago whenever we're hiring people. And I know I have this tendency myself, and I just want to know, what advice would you give a business owner that is interviewing people, has very sparse candidates, and but they need people to do the work, right? So they're starting to scratch their head and say, maybe I should hire this person just to fill the seat, even though they're not a good fit for my company. What would you tell him? What advice would you give that business owner or HR manager that's getting ready to make what I would consider probably a bad decision, but because they need to fill a seat?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, but it's also quite a hard one to answer. I'm going to go back to probably not a great answer. I have, in my experience, just used my gut instinct. I've been in management before, so recruiting people, interviewing them, and hiring them, and unfortunately having to fire them as well. It's not new to me. I have done it within recruitment. In fact, when I started in recruitment in '96, I always had a member of staff that I was responsible for who answered to me. So it's always happened. And in all honesty, you have to look at the bigger picture. You have to think about what are the qualities that this person's bringing, because let's face it, there's very few jobs that you get these days where you can't learn how to do it. It just takes time. So you have to ask yourself, your question obviously is, do I have that time? That's also important, because there's nothing worse than starting somebody into a job and then isolating them and not giving them the time that they need to develop and learn the job properly. But yeah, I'm afraid I'll go back to my gut instinct, and even thinking back, it's usually been a gut feeling that I've had that, this person's got something. They're maybe not perfect, but they've got certain qualities that I think would be an asset to my business.
I think that's a phenomenal answer. I do think that you have to go to your gut at some point. You've got to make a decision, and you can't necessarily make it on what's written down on the paper or even the first impression. I think as interviewing managers and recruiting, we have to realize that people are super nervous in these interviews, and they're not being their real selves. And there's all these different kinds of emotions that are flying when you're in this process on both sides of the fence, right? The manager really needs to hire somebody. He's he's working late because he's not getting the job done, and on the other side, they really want the job, or they think this would be a fun place to work. So it's a challenge. If the gut says no, I'd say don't do it at all.
I mean, one could actually argue that interviewing is actually the most unnatural thing to go through, because if when you get along with people, you don't try and do that within an hour or half an hour. When you meet somebody and strike up a relationship, a friendship, and you're like, oh, I like this person, and then that grows. It's not usually done within half an hour or an hour, no. And you're not thinking about everything else. About, am I writing? Have I done enough research? Am I writing the right questions down? Have I asked them that thing yet? Have I checked all the challenges that they might have starting this job? So it's actually quite unnatural, right. Interviewing. But what other method do I have? I've still to find someone to come up with an alternative. And the other problem is as a manager, you're probably under pressure that you know that job needs filled. So can you afford to have 3, 4, 5 interviews? Probably not. Probably not.
Right. And I think you should, right? We interview not relentlessly. We're always interviewing people. We just hired a kid yesterday, and I say kid, but he's in his 30s. I met him at lunch 2 weeks ago, right? I was at the bar having lunch and met this guy sitting next to me. We were talking, and he's a delivery driver, and he was looking for a new career. I'm like, well, here's my number. Give me a call. We'll get you an interview next week. And we made an offer, and he accepted yesterday. So I think the opportunities are out there, and you have your standard on this is how we recruit people, but don't ever think that you can't just strike up a conversation at the person next to you at lunch and start talking, because I've closed more business that way than any other way in my career.
Exactly. Well, it's funny you should say that, because there was one company that I worked for, one recruitment consultancy, and the managers literally used to hire the barmaids and barmen from the local bar. You know, if that person had that kind of rapport where they could connect with a customer, remember what the customer's been saying, actually listen to the customer, then they had something that you need in recruitment. And it's funny because, you know, I've been in sales pretty much apart from the teaching, although you could say I had to sell education, which is almost impossible to some young people. But, you know, people used to say, oh, you could sell sand to the Arabs. But actually, the most successful people in sales, it's not about talking. It's actually about listening and then reacting to what you hear, not about what's coming out your mouth.
Right. I will hire a bartender, a barback, a waitress or waiter well before I hire a college-educated person, because I know that they have real work experience, real life experience with people, and I know that they know how to hustle, right? Because you don't make a living in that industry without having a little bit of hustle.
No, so, you have to be able to get on with people. Yeah, exactly.
Right. All right, Steve, if you could go back and talk to yourself in 2019 and give yourself one piece of advice before you started McNally Recruitment, what would that advice be?
Oh, wow. You are coming up with some tough questions. 2019. You know, it's going to sound a bit cliche or a bit cheesy, but I wouldn't actually give myself any different advice other than good for you for giving it a shot. You know, there's nothing really I would have changed. It would have been great to have had more money where I could have hired people to do the things that I do. I certainly, unfortunately for my sins, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. Everything has to be exact, and especially when it's out in the public domain is what I'm talking about. It's not like I go home and iron the shirts in a particular way or anything like that, but for business, when it's out in the public or going to a customer, for me it has to be absolutely perfect. So yeah, I definitely spent a hell of a lot of time doing things that, one, I didn't have the skill set for, and two, is it productive? Is it getting me business? And it definitely wasn't. I mean, the logo and stuff, whilst I had it within minutes, you know, tweaking it and getting it to fit in certain places, like LinkedIn, I still haven't figured out how to get that background picture in LinkedIn to fit properly. But, you know, there you go. So, yeah, I probably wouldn't have given myself any other advice. I think I did okay in what I did. I didn't overspend. Again, one of the things you learn from these business programs and listen to business people is, you know, most businesses fail because they spend too much money in the first year. So I was very conscious that I wasn't going to do that. So I hired an office, which was co-share, so not ideal. But now, you know, last September, I've now moved into these new offices, which are all mine, big enough for about 4 staff. So yeah, you know, it's just about determination. And yeah, I actually wouldn't have given myself, I wouldn't have done anything differently than what I did.
Well, congratulations on this journey. Yeah, it's a great thing. I think that starting a business is a lot like starting a family. You have to make the decision, make the commitment, and move forward. And that's really all you can do. If you wait until you're ready to start your business, you wait till you're ready to have that first baby, it might never happen. Right?
Although that can happen by surprise as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And both of them can happen by surprise, right? There's some times that, you know, you're just really good at something, you have a hobby and it turns into your business, and that's a wonderful thing too. So my advice to everybody out there is, if you want to do it, just start doing it. And if you're waiting till you're ready, it's not going to happen.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I've been giving that advice to people ever since I've been in business and been in the corporate world. If you are determined enough, you will achieve it. It's that simple. And it does sound cliche and cheesy, and like, is this off the TV? But it's a fact. The bigger the effort you put into something, the greater the reward. And if you really are dead set and determined to do something, then just go ahead and do it.
Okay. Now, do you do recruitment nationwide, or is Scotland globally? If somebody wanted to work with you, how would they get in contact with you, and who would be the right person that you would want to talk to?
So anybody that's hiring IT staff, and thank you to the pandemic, you can pretty much hire people anywhere in the world, literally anywhere in the world. My first client was actually down south in England, but I actually got them two developers up here in Scotland, so they work 100% remotely. I've obviously got clients in Scotland as well. I haven't actually consciously yet expanded out into looking at businesses in other parts of the world. But these days, because of the fantastic technology that we have, and companies being forced to take action about how they do their business, what we're doing now wasn't the norm. Doing things remotely, doing things by video, but now it is the norm. So it's really opened the door to the world. Really, the world is literally your oyster. You can have business with anybody anywhere in the world, and somebody could work for you based anywhere in the world. But to get in touch with us, you would just simply look up our website, www.mcnallyrecruitment.com, or email me directly, which is just simply steve@mcnallyrecruitment.com, and I would be more than happy to see what I can do for you.
Thank you for Thank you for your time today, Steve. I very much appreciate it, and I love to hear your stories. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for today's show, folks. If you'd like to join my text line community, the number is 314-370-2871. To join that text line community, all you have to do is send me any text message question about business or technology, and I'll give you an absolutely free, unbiased answer. That's it for today. Get to work.